fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
get out there and do all the things that you feel like you're too young, too old to fill in the blank to do.
Hey you! Yes, you! Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers, what's going on? It's me, your host, Jen Glantz. I am back with another episode just for you. My goodness, I have finally caved and given in to the whole wedding planning thing. Like, I have been putting this off for so many months. The wedding is officially, literally officially 6 months away, and I have not done very much. We barely, by the skin of our teeth, just sent out save the date / invitations. We're doing a bit of a combo, but that's really all we've done. We sort of built a wedding website, we got some hotels for people, I don't know, but we haven't even done the big things. We don't have any food, we don't have any flowers, we don't have anything, and it's mostly my fault because I have been extremely procrastinating this whole wedding thing. And it's not because I don't want to get married. I'm super excited to spend my life with my partner, Adam. He is the greatest thing in the world for me. But the problem is I just have so many other things to do. I have this podcast and I have my business and I write a lot, and I'm also running a marathon. And by marathon, I mean half of a marathon, but it feels like 10 times a marathon. And then planning this wedding is a whole other full-time job. We all know that. I know that especially. But things are different when you plan your own wedding. One of the things I want to be super transparent about that I didn't hear a lot of people talk about before I started planning my own wedding. I saw it through the eyes of the brides I worked with, but I didn't see it so clearly until I started planning my own wedding, is that wedding planning makes you depressed and it makes you super anxious. And one of the reasons that I feel like that is because of the whole compare and contrast world of it. For example, one of the things I felt really down about was my lack of close friendships. And I've been feeling very down about that. I have some incredible friends. I don't want to discount them. I have some amazing people in my life, but I don't have a friendship group. I don't have a circle of friends. You go on Instagram and you see people have these bachelorette parties and they're wearing these matching outfits, and there's 15 incredible women all together. They look like they're having the time of their life. They've been friends since they're 4, and it just looks really cool. And I don't have that. I've never really had that. I've always been the person who growing up was sort of bullied in school and laughed at, so I never had many close friends. This isn't a therapy session, but I'll tell you, I think about this a lot, and I think because I was laughed at and I was sort of bullied in elementary school and middle school, when I tried to be friends with people, I found that I often got hurt by them. So I think toward the end of that middle school period, I just kept to myself. I did my own thing. I played with my Barbie dolls a lot. Those were my friends. My dog was my friend. And it wasn't until high school where I went to a brand new school, because I went to the same school from kindergarten to 8th grade, so I only had access to the same people every year for the first, 12, 13 years of my life. So when I went to high school, I finally started to make other friends, and people were really cool. And high school for me was great, not because I was the most popular, but because I was now exposed to hundreds of new people, whereas in my little school, I only knew, my class was 40 people from kindergarten to 8th grade. Now I had hundreds of people I could be friends with, and I built a lot of great friendships, but I never had a group. I was friends with a little bit of everyone, everywhere. Same thing in college. In college, I was friends with all different people. Yeah, we had a group. I was in a sorority and I had a group of friends. It was awesome. But then after college, I moved around all around the country. I lived a little bit of an unconventional life, still sort of do, and I lost that friendship group. And I think it's really entirely my fault, to be honest, because I did move around a lot. For 2 whole years, my now fiance and I didn't have a home. We lived in a new city every month. It's nearly impossible to maintain friendships when you do not live anywhere. So I lost a lot of that. Which is to say, when you plan a wedding, you start to feel down about the things you don't have. Do I wish I had a friendship circle? Of course. Am I going to get that between now and October? No. Is it going to ruin my wedding? No. But does it make me feel sad? Yes. I see these weddings that people post, and then I Google the wedding vendors, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to hire this DJ. They look amazing. And then the DJ is $7,000, which is literally almost half of my wedding budget, and I can't afford that. Does that make me feel sad? Yes. Is that going to make my wedding not good? No. But a lot of these, I wish I had, I wish I had, I wish I had. And the same thing goes with family, and different dynamics in your life start to bring you down. And even if you're planning your dream wedding, you're spending $300,000, I guarantee you feel this way, because when you plan anything at this level, at this scale, with so many people watching and caring, it's inevitable that you're going to feel these emotions. And I just want to bring them to the table, because I felt this way for a while and I felt so alone. And then I did a Google search the other day, Googling, do other people feel depressed planning their wedding? And there were so many articles and statistics about people who are feeling so down planning their wedding. And I realized, Jen, you're not alone. It's just that people don't talk about this kind of stuff because it seems taboo, and it shouldn't be. On the topic of friendships, one of the things I decided in 2020 is to stop complaining about all of the things I have done wrong to mess up my friendships, and instead start figuring out how to make more close friends. One of the ways I did that, and I wrote about this for NBC, and I wanted to bring this person onto the podcast because she is incredible, is I worked with a friendship coach. I did not know those existed. I pitched an article to NBC. I was like, I need to make friends. Let me hire a friendship coach. And they were like, okay, do it. And then I was like, oh my God, does this job exist? But it does. And I worked with someone named Danielle Jackson. She is a certified friendship coach, the author of Give It a Rest, The Case for Tough Love Friendships, and the founder of Give It a Rest Movement, a digital community that provides resources, events, and strategies to help women navigate conflict in their friendship. So I worked with Danielle for the article I wrote. She gave me some challenges to help me make friends. And after the phone call with her, I was like, Danielle, I need to have you on my podcast. You are going to inspire so many listeners on how they can make friends without doing things that totally push them out of their comfort zone or make them feel weird. So on the show today, Danielle walks us through the 3 challenges she gave me, and I talk about how I did them, what the results were, how it made me feel. And look, when you're out there and you're listening, whether you have no friends, which I get you, or you have a million friends, I think a lot of Danielle's tips just teach you how to associate and adore and open up to the people around you. And no matter who you are, where you are, what your feelings are, I think this could really help you out. Hope you enjoy the show, and if you love this podcast, I hope you do. Make sure you subscribe. That way new episodes will pop on your phone once a week, every week. Plus, if you can, give us a review on iTunes already. We're close to 150 5-star reviews. Can you make it happen for us? We're a couple short of 150. I want to read a review that I just saw that I'm so in love with and grateful for. It's from a listener named Lauren. She says, I feel like when I listen to this podcast, I'm in a coffee shop, eavesdropping on really cool conversations with awesome people. She takes a lot of notes. Each episode provides her valuable tips that she can apply to her life right now. Oh, that makes me so happy. So if you have good feelings about this show, or really any feelings, but not 1-star feelings, go to iTunes, leave us a review. It helps us out so much. Also, enjoy this episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Jen and Juice Coaching by yours truly. For the past 5 years, I've worked with over 100 people to help them feel, well, less stuck. Whether you're looking to change careers, start a side hustle, or just get a strategy for your life, head on over to jenglance.com/coaching and you can find out about my 1-hour coaching specials that will help you feel like you can finally cross those things off your to-do list and start whatever kind of project, life change, or dream that you have. Thank you so much for being on the show today. My very first question for you is, if you were at a party, how would you introduce yourself and tell people what it is that you do?
Okay, that is a great question because there's a lot of misunderstanding around what I do, but I would say this. I'd say, hi, my name is Danielle. I'm a publicist by day and a friendship coach by night. And although it sounds kind of silly to say friendship coach, hearing that 30% of people are claiming to be super lonely, my job is more relevant than ever.
I love that you mentioned that it might sound weird if you say you're a friendship coach. And the thing about being a friendship coach is a lot of people hear that term and they're like, what does that mean? What do you do? So please share with those listening, what exactly does it mean to be a friendship coach?
That's a great question. Just typically, I mean, you've probably seen an influx of people calling themselves life coaches. And to be honest, I almost wanted to kind of like stay away from that phrase because I'm, giving the eye roll like, oh, God, who isn't a coach? But I found myself, because I used to be a teacher, so I found myself as a high school teacher always kind of stepping in when girls were lamenting their problems with other girls. And then as a publicist, some of my female clients are talking about their drama with other women. And I thought, okay, this is a thing. Women are struggling with. I'm sorry. Is there echo a little bit?
Oh, I just changed the audio a little bit, but I can still hear you.
Okay, great. I just noticed, whether it's with teenagers or adult women, we're struggling connecting with other women, but nobody teaches us how to handle that. So if you think about it, there are so many resources on, how to be a boss in the boardroom, and there's so many resources on, how to have a thriving marriage, but there's next to nothing about how to be a good friend, how to make friends. So to be totally transparent, I was a little nervous about even using that title and saying, oh, I'm a friendship coach, but I was overwhelmed by the response that I received when I started. So I either take on individual clients. So let's say you're moving to a new city and you're struggling with making friends. We can kind of go through different activities and I can kind of coach you through some mindset stuff. But I also host events and teach women some skills. I write articles that are research-based, and I have something called vent sessions. So women will literally order a 25-minute session to vent about an issue they're having with a friend, and I kind of coach them through it. It's just a one and done to kind of help them through it. So a variety of things, but all with the mission to help women through a tough time with female friendship.
I love that. And you mentioned early on that around 30% of people don't have close relationships. So can we talk a little bit about that? Why do you think that making friends, especially in the year 2020, is a little bit of a challenge and a little bit different from years past?
Yeah, isn't that kind of surprising? 30% of people saying they don't have any friends. And some of us are like, how is that possible? Especially in a place like New York where there's so many people moving around. But I often see that technology is blamed. It's almost like our scapegoat for everything. Technology is the reason why. We have no human connection. And while that's kind of serving as a hotbed for the issue is not really that surprising. And it's because of this. A lot of our community-based things kind of went away. So people used to be in bowling leagues and having Tupperware parties, and that sounds kind of old school, but it was very normal to be a part of some kind of community outside of your job, outside of your home. It was normal. People were attending church more than they're doing now. So people were a part of groups that were designed to connect you. It was a part of their daily or weekly life. But that has declined, which means the opportunity to meet people and to be repeatedly exposed to the same people has decreased. So I think that's one reason. And the other reason that I like to highlight is I think that it's a mindset thing. I think that a lot of us believe friendship should be easy, that you just click with somebody, you just vibe, you get the same sense of humor, you watch the same shows, and you're besties for life. And that's not true. It takes work. So that's a very unromantic idea. But if we keep seeing friendship as something that's supposed to be easy and instant, then when it doesn't happen, we're setting ourselves up for loneliness.
Okay, I have so many things to say here, and the first is I wish more people would be honest about the fact that they don't have very many close friends. I think a lot of people like to hide that loneliness and maybe not be the first to admit it, because when you hear a shocking fact that 30% of people don't have so many close relationships, you start to realize, oh wow, I'm not alone. So I think that more people should honestly maybe come up and say that I don't have a lot of close friendships, or I've lost a lot of close friendships. And the same thing happened to me. I think that I thought making friends was so easy because you graduate college where you have all of these friends, and it was so easy making friends when you were in school, but then as you rise in your 20s, you start to see it's harder and harder, and it becomes more difficult. And then all of a sudden, you start to feel a little bad about it. So for a while, I started to blame myself. Maybe I was a bad friend. Maybe my priorities were all over the place. Maybe I just grew apart from people because it's a me thing. So what do you have to say to people who are internalizing this fact that they're making less and less close relationships and starting to feel like it's all their fault?
Oh, Jen, I love that question. And that's such a great point about believing you're the only one. First, let me address that. One of the components of loneliness is perceived isolation. So that means that you think you are by yourself. You have the mentality that it's just me. And that almost like perpetuates our feelings of loneliness. So let's combat that by putting out the fact that you are not by yourself. It is super common. It's totally normal to go through a period of your life, specifically your mid-20s, when your friendship group begins to decrease. That is a fact. And just like you said, research shows us that once you hit your mid-20s, specifically 25, your network shrinks rapidly because you're no longer in college or saturated in an environment with your peers. Other things are now competing for your time. So you've prioritized advancing at work, you're getting married, you have kids. So there's no time, quote unquote, to meet friends. There's just less time to do that. But if you are thinking, oh my gosh, it's just me, that's not true. And like I said about technology not being the reason for our loneliness, but simply a hotbed of breeding those feelings, it's even you're even more inclined to believe you're by yourself when you're scrolling through a feed full of women, arm in arm with a caption that's like hashtag squad goals. Then it further feeds the idea that, wow, everybody's got this strong friend group. I'm the only one. And it's really not true. So if you are listening and you think that, first, it helps to know that it's not just you, it's a lot of people. But then the question becomes, okay, so how do I start getting connected?
There's nothing that makes you feel more lonely and questioning just everything than wedding planning, especially when you're scrolling through Instagram and seeing all these hashtags and matching outfits and people who have like 12 bridesmaids. I'm just like, what did I do wrong? And I know that it's all misleading, but exactly that. I mean, you compare and contrast your life with what you see on social media, when oftentimes what you see on social media isn't even true. And before we go into the friendship challenges that you had given me, I want to talk about another topic, which is the art of breaking up with a friend. Something that happened to me a couple of years ago that's hard to talk about is I had a best friend of mine, like ultimate best friend, out of the blue break up with me and tell me that they no longer wanted to be my friend, and they didn't really have a reason. They just didn't want anything to do with me, and it was very abrupt and very shocking. And obviously that was not the right way to break up with a person. And yes, I do believe like you can break up with friends, but when you are talking to people who might have some friends that they no longer want to be as close with, what are like one or two tips to go about breaking up with that person without making them feel devastated?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question because we all go through it. In fact, research tells us that you replace half of your friends every 7 years. So if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm breaking with friends, is this normal? We were supposed to be friends for life. It's just a part of the human experience. We make them and then they end and they're seasonal and that's okay. Yeah, friendship breakups are devastating. I think they're even more hurtful because our network tends to understand when we have a romantic breakup, or when we lose a job. But they're so painful, not just because it's about, friendship loss, but it's about loss in general. It's about grief. And that really hurts. So, when it comes to releasing a friendship that you believe no longer serves you, one, know that it's totally okay. But a couple things I would encourage you to keep in mind. One is it really time to end it? Meaning you are eliminating this person from your life. And I encourage you to ask yourself why you're ending it. If it's because things have gotten difficult, I'm always a champion of having tough conversations. So, have you had difficult conversations beforehand, or is this kind of an out to not have talks that you should be having? So, really assessing that first before it's like, okay, this is toxic and I need to leave, which is totally necessary sometimes. So, two, tactical tips for actually doing it would be to make sure that the environment is appropriate. As much as you can, have it in person, as in person as possible. I know it's super uncomfortable, but it's just a dignified and respectable thing to do versus, texting or something like that. So if you can meet them in person, it's the proper way to go. And also, we learn this from school and in our, elementary school days about using you language and I language, but really make sure that you've processed why you're releasing it so that when you have the conversation, it doesn't become a tit for tat. It doesn't become well, since you're like this, then I can't be your friend anymore. Is it about them? Is it about you? So really assessing why you want to do it, doing it as in person as possible, and trying your best not to feel bad afterwards, which I know is easier said than done. But process your feelings because it's okay to feel bad, even if you're the one releasing it, and to just try to do it as dignified as you can, and then finally to not give in to the temptation to tell all your other friends about it, because that's when drama kind of ensues, when you're talking about it to other people. So make sure you've processed it before you make the decision, and then have it as in face as possible.
I love that. And I gotta say, even though it was painful to be broken up with on the other end of this, I do respect the fact that this person did it in person. And I think that that made, it made it a little bit more respectable than getting a text message or a phone call or just completely ghosting the person. So I agree with your advice. And I do agree that friendships do break up. There's no contract that you have with a friend. When you get into a relationship, there's you talk about these things, you talk about expectations, but with friends you just sort of go with the flow with them, and then all of a sudden things can get weird or they can get awkward or there's resentment. So I do believe in the art of maybe having to part ways with people even though it could be painful. And one of the
Absolutely.
things you spoke about with me for my NBC article was the differences in making friends based on if you are an introvert, extrovert, or you have social anxiety. So I want to talk about each of those buckets real fast. And I also want to hear from you what struggles maybe people who are more introverted might have versus those that are extroverted versus those that might have social anxiety.
Yes, yeah. Something I noticed that I don't see around, so I was sharing with you earlier, I can give tips on how to meet friends all day, and you'll read a couple tips online, but there's not much discussion around how those tips might need to be modified a little bit according to your extroversion level. So for extroverts, my biggest tip is to be quiet and listen because, when we go to parties and networking events, we are energized by the presence of other people. So we like to chat, we like to work the room. But the first thing I would say for an extrovert is to ask more questions, and to ask follow-up questions. So that means you propose one question, you listen, and then you give another one. So, not to be condescending, and that might sound like, oh, that's, basic conversation, social skills, but sometimes, especially as women, we're so eager to establish common ground. So we want to be like, oh my God, girl, me too. And oh yeah, I lived there too, and all that. And that's great. But sometimes it takes away from them being able to share about themselves. And people like to talk about themselves. So let them share, ask questions to show that you're interested, and that'll help you to kind of breed some friendship and likability, is to ask questions. So that's for my extroverts who like to talk, talk, talk. Another tip for extroverts would be instead of going wide, go deep. So, sometimes we get to a party and we want to work the room and we want to talk to everybody, and that's great. But you might leave that party and still feel like you didn't make a deep connection, and that's because you were just kind of running your mouth with everybody. But maybe force yourself to find one or two people and have like more engaged conversations with them to kind of breed some kind of depth and familiarity with a few people instead of trying to shine everywhere. For my introverts, we get tired sometimes when we're out. So being with other people takes energy away from us. So maybe some tips here could be when you come home from work, you're going to be tempted to say, no, I'll just stay in. I'm not going to go out. Some little things like keeping your work clothes on so that you don't get comfortable. You get on the couch, you're just wanting to veg out on Netflix, and make yourself kind of go. If you're at a party or some kind of social outing, take pauses in between talking to people so you can kind of recharge. So if that means playing with the dog that's running around for a couple seconds to give yourself a breather, or finding a quiet hallway to just kind of de-stress for just a second and then jump back out there, you got to do little things to recharge yourself. And I encourage you to share more about yourself. So unlike the extroverts, share more about yourself. Introverts tend to come across as good listeners because they're quiet and they let other people kind of chat about themselves, but share about yourself too so people can actually feel like they're getting to know you. And finally, for those with social anxiety, and this is often used synonymously as being an introvert, but those are different. Social anxiety means you are really, really in your head. So this is the person who's going to hang out and they're like, oh my gosh, did what I just said sound really dumb? Does she think I'm silly? Is there something on my face? Do I look super awkward as I walk in here? So your mind's just going a million miles a minute. For those with social anxiety, I would suggest that you avoid avoidant behavior. So that means you're doing little things like being on your phone because you're super anxious about actually engaging. But hey, I mean, think about it. When you do that, think about the image from the outside. You look like you can't be bothered. You look preoccupied. You don't look approachable. So try to avoid doing the things that you do to avoid engaging with people because you're getting in your own way. So if you can identify your extroversion level, then you can better figure out what you need to do or stop doing to make yourself open up to the possibility of making more friends.
I love that. And I remember when we talked last, I told you that I had some social anxiety, and I'm the kind of person that will just go to a party, find the corner, play on my phone, maybe not make eye contact. And I didn't even realize that that's making me come off as not wanting to talk to people and not being open. So sometimes we do have to look at our behavior and start to see like how open were we when it came to making friends. And jumping into the challenges. So a little bit of backstory is I had to write an article for NBC about working with a friendship coach because I've been complaining for the past couple of years that I've had trouble making friends. And Danielle coached me through it. She gave me 3 challenges. I went off and did the 3 challenges, and then I wrote about what happened. So I want to go through each challenge that you gave me, Danielle, and talk about why you gave it to me and why other people could go out there and do these challenges. And what I loved about working with you is these challenges weren't things that really, really, really were like out of the box and weird. Like, she didn't make me go out there and wear a sign that said, I have no friends, will you be my friend? Or, you didn't make me do anything that was super, super crazy. And some of it, pushed me out of the comfort zone, but not in like an awkward way. So I really think that these challenges are very practical no matter who you are, where you live, and what's around you. So the very first challenge was something that seemed obvious, but I never would have thought to do it. You said tap into friends of friends. So what did you mean by that, and why do you feel that that's a great place to start when it comes to making new relationships and building new friendships?
Yeah, starting with friends of friends is helpful because sometimes we think making new friends starts with a clean slate. So let me go meet a stranger. Let me strike up a conversation. It's going to be amazing, and we're going to be besties. And that's a very idealized view of making a new best friend. But if you don't want to kind of go in uncharted territory, I always suggest finding somebody who's quote unquote bestie adjacent. So this is somebody who's already in your network. Maybe picture the woman who you see when you go to, gatherings, or every time a big circle of friends goes out for coffee or drinks, or at yoga, that woman who's friends with your friend. Start there because you already have some stuff in common, so that kind of lays the groundwork for conversation, and she's already kind of in your realm, in your network, so you don't have to stretch so far for a newbie. Start with people it's a little less intimidating.
I love it. And I did that. I reached out to some people, and I remember I asked you this question, which I think is a question other people might have that might stop them from doing this is, Danielle, what if they don't respond? Or what if they just like don't want to get together with you? Like that's a big fear people have. So how should people consider that or not even consider that?
Yeah, I know that it is nerve wracking, the idea of rejection. And I really think that's at the heart of starting anything new and putting yourself out there, whether that's business, romance. It is. It's intimidating and it's very fearful. What if they say no? And you can almost visualize it so clearly. But here's my response to that is, yeah, they might say no. That's the response. They might say no. So maybe reframe your thinking, and instead of putting it in the unknown of, oh my gosh, what if she says no? What if I look like a total loser? Instead, see it more as um, an exercise for you. That way it's not dependent on them saying yes or no. If you text them and say, hey, so I got 2 tickets to this concert. I feel like it could be cool. I feel like I remember you mentioning something about liking that band. Super random, but let me know if you want to go or not. Or, doing little things like that. She might say no, but you need to celebrate even having the courage to do it, because the more you do that, it's like a probability thing. The more you do it, the more people are going to respond to you in the affirmative. So put yourself out there. Understand rejection's totally a part of putting yourself out there, and remind yourself that it's not personal. It could be bad timing. They could be swamped with work. I mean, think about the times that you say no to people. It might not be personal, so just do it anyway, but make it less about them and more about you pushing yourself.
I love that. And I'm always scared of rejection, but try to push through it. And I remember I reached out to a person to get together with them, and first they didn't respond for like 2 weeks. And I was like, oh no, like they hate me. And then when they responded, it was like a little bit vague. And I just sort of brushed it off as they don't like me. And I internalized it. Like I put all of my insecurities out there. Like, they don't like me because of this reason and this reason and this reason. And then like another week went by and they messaged me and they were like, I'm so sorry, I forgot to respond fully to this, but I can't really get together right now because I'm living in another state, But for the whole couple of weeks that I had reached out and felt rejected, I thought it was so personal, but really people have a million different reasons for why they can't get together. And even if it is personal, not everyone is meant to be your friend. So I love that. And I think this is a great level one, is to tap into people you already sort of know, or even friends of friends, like the people you see around. Challenge 2 got me out of the house, which I appreciated, and that was to have more conversations with people in public, people you sort of see every day. And I love this because even though I can come off as very extroverted, I can be extremely shy, and there's always opportunities to talk to people, and sometimes I brush them off by just playing on my phone or not making eye contact. So I want to talk to you about this second challenge. Why is it important to just talk to more people who you interact with on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, I think that we underestimate the amount of potential out there in the real world. So, as you go through your day, think about how often you get an Uber or you get a Lyft, and then you go get coffee, and then you grab some things at Target. Well, if you do that often, you're likely seeing the same people, and there are chances for connection. So maybe not friendship, because there's a difference. Maybe not friendship, but a chance for connecting with other human beings. So the next time you're in the Uber, chat up your driver. The next time you're waiting in line for coffee or you're standing around, chat up your barista. You're standing and waiting for them to, make your order. The next time you're in Target, especially if you put a bunch of things on the up there for them to ring up for you, have a conversation while they're ringing it up. So we have all these opportunities in front of us, but oftentimes, yes, we are scrolling our phones while we wait, and we're, doing other things to distract ourselves. And I always say that if you just look up, look up and just kind of ask them about their day or make a comment about the obvious, the weather, things like that. It just kind of, breeds connection. There's one woman I was working with, and she was new to her town, and I asked her if she had any routines. And one of her routines was to go to the local grocery store here in Tampa, and she said she typically went after work. So I told her, hey, how about every time you go to the grocery store, you get in the same aisle and let the same person check you out? Because if you're going at the same time of day, it's likely the same people working the same shift. So she went to the same checkout line, and sure enough, after a couple times, she and the woman started chatting each other up. They realized they both had young sons, and then before they knew it, they were scheduling play dates, which typically is an environment for a mom to make friends with other moms. So making conversation with strangers can really open you up to a new world.
I love that. And it happened to me today. I was at Whole Foods and the lady next to me was engaging in an incredible conversation with the person ringing her up. And I felt upset that I didn't do that. And then I went to CVS after and I tried to make conversation with the person behind the register, but I felt awkward. So I know that that could be another excuse that some people will give is I don't want to make small talk because I don't know what to say. So are there any basic rules for, hey, here's some good default lines to say to people if you're trying to make conversation with them, but you feel awkward starting?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, you know what? I know that some people say like, I hate small talk. It feels so forced, and I agree with that. I get it, but small talk leads to big talk. It's otherwise we're just jumping right in with like, hey, so are you dating with it? Are you dating anyone? And they're like, okay, creeper. So sometimes it's helpful as we kind of ease into the big talk and the other stuff that really connects us. So if it's something with somebody like at a checkout line, it can be something as simple as you can acknowledge the randomness that kind of takes out some of the awkwardness. So you can mention one of the things that you're checking out. Let's say it's like some, strange ice cream flavor, and you just say, okay, I know this is random, but have you ever tried this stuff? It's like delicious, right? Or I'm getting this for the first time. Have you ever had it? This could be a big mistake. I have no idea. So sometimes commenting on the obvious, that stuff that's right in front of you, that way it feels less risky. But I would encourage you not to avoid small talk because it leads to the big talk, and maybe try things that aren't the typical like, so what do you do for work? Or so, other little things like that. Sometimes the more random, the better because it's more memorable. So you can try that.
I love it. My friend Molly always says there's an art to small talk and you almost need to practice it, right? So like, do you think a good first step is even just to start making eye contact with more people? Because, I feel like for some of us, it's hard going from avoiding people with being on our phones to striking up conversations. So do you think it's maybe a good first step to make eye contact and then maybe just verbally say hello? Like, what are some good first steps with this?
100%. And I often draw parallels to the romantic context because a lot of times what works over there sometimes works for friendship. So, I know in my single days when I was hanging out and, looking at prospects at the party and things like that, you tend to lead with the people who you were first making eye contact with across the room. Because if you are making eye contact more than once or kind of, sustaining the eye contact for a little bit, it shows, okay, this person's, into it. They seem open. They seem like they receive me well. And the same thing goes for friendships. So in order to reduce the chances of them feeling like it's random, looking at them a couple times first. Or, I'm working on being a sarcastic person, but little things like when you're in the meeting and somebody says something crazy and you look at each other and you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, right? Like those kinds of looks kind of warm you up for the verbal introduction. So I totally agree with your suggestion of making eye contact first. Such an underrated move, but such a necessary catalyst for bigger things.
Yeah, and it leads into the third challenge you gave me, which was to go find a group, whether it was a meetup or some type of hobby, and go more than once. So why did you suggest that, and what is the power of going back to things more than one time when you're trying to make friends?
Yeah, so I often hear the advice given of, you're trying to make new friends, then, go to a place like meetup.com or go join a club or something, just go. And so while I totally agree with that advice, I feel like we're missing part two, which is go more than once.
Mm.
So I always encourage going 3 times. And this is because the key ingredient of making a friendship is repeated exposure. So I'm seeing you multiple times. And that can't happen if I just show my face once. I decide that it was weird or I didn't like it or, gosh, well, I didn't make friends like I thought. So I'm over that. What's the next thing? And I think that we are ending things prematurely. So if you go more than once, I always encourage 3 times. If you go more than once, it gives you an opportunity to breed familiarity. So maybe I see a woman the first time and she mentions something about her dog being sick. And so by the time I see her the third time, I can say like, hey, didn't you mention the other week that your dog was sick? How did everything go with that? So it gives me a chance to follow up, to see her multiple times, to learn each other's names. But I always say, if you can, don't quit on the first time just because you didn't meet your bestie. It takes 2 or 3 times before you get to even warn people on a little bit of a deeper level instead of dismissing them on the superficial stuff. So I think the third time's the charm, and you'll find that maybe you meet some people that you could connect with. Maybe not your bestie, but people you can connect with. So what was your experience during that challenge?
It was interesting because the first time I felt a little awkward. I didn't meet anyone, but I pulled into challenge 2 and I made eye contact and I said hello. And then the second time I would walk up to people and say, oh, James, nice to see you again, and recalling things from the first time. And then by the third time, it felt better and better and better. And this has happened in everything I've ever done. Anytime I joined like a club or took an improv class, the first couple weeks are awkward. No one's really like making that connection. But then by week 6 or 7, everyone's best friends. Like I have taken so many classes in New York City where at first the people you're like, I don't know if we'll ever be friends, but then you do turn into being friends or even just like Facebook friends kind of thing, So I think you're right. I think what happens is, and I'm guilty of this, you go one time and maybe you didn't talk to anyone, maybe you feel awkward, and then you just like never ever go again. And I think that that's sort of the breaking point for people is if it's not instant, especially in this world, especially with friendships, they feel like it's not going to happen for them in that situation and they flee. But that's not right, right?
100%. And I'm going to pick on women here a little bit because I think that we do this more than men. But I think we idealize what our bestie would look like. We'd have the same sense of humor, and she would just get me. And I read this in a book. This is not my personal idea, but I read in a book once. Sometimes we're subconsciously auditioning people in our heads. So we'll meet someone and we're just like, oh, okay, cool, and asking them questions, and we're trying to see if she could be our best friend. And I just get sad sometimes because I know that we're cutting off really great opportunities to have relationships with other women. And so, if you find yourself seeing if she'd be a good fit, try to get in your head and stop yourself before you do that and kind of give her a chance, get a chance to learn her. There's research from the University of Kansas that tells us that it takes about 50 hours to make somebody and consider them an associate. And then 90 hours to consider somebody a friend, and then 200 hours to consider someone a best friend. Now, of course, we don't have time to spread that 200 hours out to a bunch of people, and that's why it's really special to have a best friend. But when we think about it numerically, I wonder if we'd be more intentional about clocking hours together. So I often joke that I wonder if we saw like a little timer on each other's foreheads of how many hours we've clocked, if we'd be more intentional about moving forward because we know like, oh, phew, okay, I'm only at 12 hours. I got to keep pushing, and that's why a lot of us end up becoming friends with people at work. I mean, we're there with them all day, hours a week, but that's the key ingredient of learning people. So that kind of serves as my justification of, hey, go to that meetup group, that improv class more than once, because you've got to clock hours together before you can feel like best friends.
I am in shock that is something that is true. I mean, 200 hours is wild, but I think that also tells us something about the whole phenomenon of making fast friends. Like, I know I've been places where I've met someone and I'm like, this is my new best friend. And then like 6 weeks later, we don't speak. So what's the deal with that? Is it just like you get so intrigued by a person based on maybe superficial things, or because that happens a lot is we make these fast friends, but they're not anyone that we still talk to a couple months later.
Yeah, and first I want to say, there's if that's where you are for that season of your life is making fast friends and it was fun and then it was over and you can easily reflect on like, man, that was a great time. Then that's totally fine. But I think the reason we make fast friends is because it makes us feel close, and feeling close to somebody feels really good. But there is a difference between closeness and platonic intimacy, like just between female friends. There's a difference. Intimacy takes time. That means I'm learning things about you, and we've had a chance to kind of go through some trials and to express diverging opinions and to still be friends in spite of that. So fast friends probably, comes from a place of, like I said earlier, like having, a shared sense of humor, and just kind of clicking. And it's okay to have like chemistry with another woman. I know I certainly have had, and even right now, I've kind of met a new woman in my life and I'm like, God, she's really awesome. Like kind of like a girl crush on her. And we've been hanging out more together and we text for silly little things and it happens kind of quickly. And those are fun. I think the trick is just to not confuse it with intimacy and to put bigger expectations on that fast friendship, and taking your time to turn it into something really meaningful. You just might be experiencing a quick shot of closeness, and that's okay. But one danger of it, I will say, is it might feel like intimacy, and because of that, we're sharing things that maybe are super personal or getting really vulnerable too soon because it just feels like we can. So kind of just using discernment of what it is and where it can go, but having fun with it in the meantime.
Yeah, that's certainly something I do. I meet someone and I'm like, here's my whole life story, and it's extremely overwhelming. And then they're like, listen, I can't be your friend. But I've also had that same thing where I've met someone and I really am intrigued by them. I even like, Adam will make fun of me because I'm even sitting on my phone, like figuring out what to text. And I'm like, does this sound cool? Because I'm like so impressed by them. But really, like, you're impressed by things you hardly know, and I think it's very similar to dating. We have a question from Marissa, who messaged me from the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. Marissa says, Danielle, I'm loving this conversation. My question is, right now in the time of social distancing and being home due to the coronavirus, what is one way that you can still get connected with people and feel that feeling of friendship even when you are stuck at home?
Such a great question. Oh, I love it. Okay. So, okay, a couple of things. And open your mind. Open your mind. Might be a little weird or new, but it's about, closeness, even though we physically, can't be obviously close with each other. We're all self-quarantined and we're all holed up in our houses. So here are a couple ideas to feel like you're still kind of connecting with your friends. One could be to watch a Netflix show together. So while you can't be in the living room physically at the same time, maybe it's something where you kind of live stream it together. I think different social media channels, and I don't even want to use examples because I might get it wrong, but different social media channels have like hangouts and live streams and things like that to let us have experiences together, even though we're in different rooms. So maybe you all can, binge 2 or 3 episodes together. FaceTiming is always something cool to put on the table. Maybe you can switch it up and FaceTime, but you guys like cook a recipe together. So maybe you fight the crowds at your local, grocery store and get some ingredients. And then you guys put each other on FaceTime, you prop it up, and you cook together and you drink wine and you talk and you laugh while you make the same thing and then see how it came out. So they might be seemingly cheesy ideas, but it's all room to kind of like grow and sustain friendship when we're not, encouraged to see each other. So doing things virtually, maybe reading a book together. I've seen, I've led a book club for 4 years, and those women and I were really close, and there have been months where we can't get together. So we've recently opened up to the idea of having Zoom calls where we talk about the book, and we're laughing and we're connecting over things we read, or we're like, oh my God, I hate this character. What? I love that character. So there are so many things we can do to talk, laugh, bond, connect, and experience together. But this is where we should totally be taking advantage of technology in the way that it can bond us.
Yeah, I love trying to see the positive in all of this, and I am not somebody who likes to be stuck at home. I can't do this, but I've told so many of my friends, hey, can we start FaceTiming or talking on the phone? And a huge goal of mine this year is to start calling people, because like, we don't call people, we text them, we DM them, and I wanted to get better at like using the phone. So I think it's a good idea of like FaceTiming friends, maybe even like making an hour session with your friends, like a hangout session, but over the FaceTime, drinking coffee or just hanging out. So I love that, and I think that's a great way of making a positive out of a situation we can't really control. Danielle, you have been amazing. You have given us so many amazing tips, and I want to end this interview like we end them all. Fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
get out there and do all the things that you feel like you're too young, too old to fill in the blank to do.
I love it, Danielle. Please share with our listeners where they can find out more about you, your book, and your friendship coaching.
You can find more at giveitaRestmovement.com, and it's called Give It a Rest because I want to help us give a rest to female stereotypes and the misunderstandings and all that stuff that kind of gets in our way. And you can also follow along on Instagram at Give It a Rest Movement, and you can come hear me run my mouth with friendship tips at Girl Give It a Rest on Instagram.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Danielle. This was incredible.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
You were amazing. Thank you. Oh my God, your tips are just so awesome always. So thank you so much. This was awesome. You are such a great person to talk to and get tips from, and I super appreciate you doing this interview with me.
No, it was super fun, and I can't wait to listen to it when it goes up. Or was it like a live thing?
Yeah, no, so it should go up probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm just finishing the schedule now. So it'll go up on iTunes. It'll go up everywhere. So it'll be access to more people. I just decided to do the live stream of a little bit of it in the group just so that people at home can sort of see firsthand. But yeah, oh man, this was amazing. You should have a podcast. Did you ever think about it?
Okay, so I definitely do, but I never promote it. I don't know. I have one. I don't know. I think I'm too in my head. Like all this stuff, and I'm still like, oh, would people even listen? Like that whole thing.
Okay, I think you need to either do a podcast or like an at-home video series because it's such a fascinating topic. Like you could even do like a challenge of the week kind of thing, but I think you need something like this because there's so many people who would flock to this, and then I think they can turn into coaching clients too. But yes, you need to do something, and you need to promote it.
Interesting. Well, thank you for the encouragement. Yeah, I have a little one that I do, but maybe I should totally start like shouting it out a little more. So
Yes.
that was very affirming, and I'll be sure to do that. But thanks again for having me. And I'm so sorry I messed up that last line. I'm super slow. I just realized what you were doing, and I'm like, oh wait, it's not going out. It's a blank on purpose.
Oh my God,
wow.
No, it's okay.
Wow.
I was like, I wonder if there's just something with that phrase and Skype, but no, don't worry. I could edit it all out so no one will ever have to hear that, so you're good.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for having me and for like being super courageous to like write the piece and do the challenges. It was kind of like, it was really cool. And I know this sounds kind of corny, but it was like, it made me so happy when I was reading it and you were like, so I did our challenge and this is what happens. And it was so cool to kind of like see it, acted out in real life and to see the results. So thank you for being brave and doing it. And then just in the future, if there's any way I can be a support system or a resource, then give me a shout.
Oh, for sure. I'm going to try to write more pieces and about friendship, and you will be the first person I reach out to. So thank you for just being so quick with your responses and everything. It's so helpful. So I really appreciate it. You are awesome.
Thanks, Jen. Back at you. I appreciate you.
Amazing. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for good reason. to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.